My in-laws humiliated me at their anniversary party, so I exposed the truth about my husband's job. My husband, Landon, 36M, and I, 34F, have been together for 12 years and married for 9. We've always been soulmates and get along wonderfully, except when it comes to my in-laws. For reasons I couldn't understand until recently, they've never truly liked or accepted me as part of their family. The real reason behind their behavior was finally revealed at their anniversary party a few days ago. Before I dive into that, let me provide some context about our situation. Landon is what you'd call a stay-at-home husband. About a year into our marriage, we realized I was earning significantly more than he was because I worked at my dad's electrical appliance business and was training to take over when he retired. Landon, on the other hand, hated his job and felt it was a waste of time. After discussing it thoroughly, we made a mutual decision. He would stay home to manage the household while I focused on my career. It was a big decision, but it worked. For us. For the past 8 years, I've been the breadwinner, and Landon has taken care of our home. 6 years ago, I became the CEO of the company when my father retired, and frankly, I earn a lot of money. Landon is happy with his role, and so am I. Despite how well this arrangement works for us, my in-laws assumed Landon was the primary earner. To be fair, we never told them otherwise. Landon didn't want them to know he wasn't working, because they're extremely old-fashioned and traditional. He knew they wouldn't take it well and didn't want to deal with their disapproval. So, we let them believe he was still employed and avoided conversations about his job. Anytime the topic came up, we quickly changed the subject to avoid unnecessary drama. This worked for us, especially since my in-laws already didn't like me when we got married. Revealing the truth about our arrangement would have only worsened things. I didn't want to make my relationship with them even more difficult, so we kept things as they were. You might wonder why I've tried so hard to maintain a relationship with my in-laws, despite their clear dislike of me. Landon has apologized to me many times for how they've treated me, but cutting them off entirely never felt like an option. My mother-in-law, Sheila, is a cancer survivor. Over the past 8 years, she's battled and overcome both skin cancer and brain cancer, and she's currently in remission. On top of that, my father-in-law, Bob, has suffered 2 heart attacks in the past 4 years. Given their health struggles, we couldn't bring ourselves to cut ties with them, no matter how cold and distant they were toward me. To be clear, my in-laws weren't overtly rude or nasty. Their behavior was more subtle but obvious to everyone. They were cold and distant whenever I was around. This started when I first met them while dating Landon and worsened after we got married. Despite this, I chose to suck it up and deal with it. I didn't want to be the reason Landon cut ties with his parents, especially considering their health issues. Landon has always been grateful for my patience and understanding, but the tension with his parents has been a constant shadow in our otherwise happy life together. The main reason I felt compelled to tolerate Landon's parents' behavior was because I had lost my own mother to cancer a few years before meeting him. Knowing what they had been through with health struggles, I didn't want to make things harder for them. I even tried to help them financially whenever I could. Since both of them are retired, they would occasionally ask Landon for financial help with certain expenses. Landon didn't have any personal income, so I would be the one covering these costs. However, to avoid raising suspicions about Landon not working, I made sure the checks were presented as coming from both of us. For the past 8 years, every vacation they've taken, every fancy purchase they've made, and every event they've hosted has been thanks to my financial support. While they believed the contributions came from both of us, I still thought I deserved at least a little gratitude for being part of it. Unfortunately, no matter what I did, they never showed me any appreciation. Recently, I even organized a celebration for their 40th wedding anniversary. As always, they believed it was a joint effort between Landon and me, but I thought this might be the one time they'd express some gratitude toward me. However, things took an unexpected turn at the party when they made a particularly cruel speech. That moment made me realize that our relationship had reached a breaking point. From the moment we arrived at the event, Landon's parents were acting strangely. At first, I couldn't figure out why, but their speech made it all clear. A couple of weeks before the party, I had purchased a luxury car for myself. Landon still drives his older car, as he doesn't go out much, and whenever we need to go somewhere together, we use my car. That day, however, Landon had arrived at their house earlier in the afternoon, and I came separately after work in my new car. It seems my car had struck a nerve with them. During their speech, instead of focusing on their milestone anniversary, they turned their attention to me. They claimed they had stayed quiet for years, but could no longer ignore what they believed to be my mooching off their son. They criticized me for supposedly living off Landon's money and labeled me a gold digger. They specifically mentioned my new car, calling it shameless that I would flaunt such a purchase while their son was still driving an old vehicle. They also commented on how modestly Landon dressed compared to me, claiming that my expensive wardrobe was an unnecessary and brazen display of dependence on him. They justified their decision to air these grievances publicly, saying they had endured my behavior in silence for nearly a decade, but they could no longer tolerate it. Their speech humiliated me in front of all the guests. Being treated coldly by them in private was one thing, but this public humiliation was beyond unacceptable. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. I got up and delivered my own speech, where I set the record straight about who was actually supporting whom. I revealed the truth about our financial situation, that I've been the sole breadwinner for years, and every luxury they've enjoyed has been funded by me. Since the party, Landon's parents have been pestering us nonstop, accusing us of humiliating them. For the record, Landon fully supports what I said. He knows everything I said is true and acknowledges that it was bound to come out eventually. After their speech, I decided to respond. As I walked up to the stage, they tried to stop me, insisting it wasn't necessary to debate them in front of everyone. But I firmly stated that not only was it necessary, but it was also crucial for them to hear the truth. I then revealed the secret Landon and I had kept for the past 8 years. Landon had not worked a single day in all that time. I explained that he had chosen to be a house husband, and I was the sole breadwinner of our family. Contrary to their assumptions, it was actually my financial support that had enabled them to enjoy their lifestyle. I pointed out how ungrateful they had been, making such a humiliating speech about me in public, despite the fact that I had been the one supporting them. I clarified that Landon's modest clothing and old car were entirely his choice, and that I had never deprived him of anything. In fact, the accusations they hurled at me were baseless and unfair. I acknowledged that it may have been a mistake not to tell them the truth earlier, but I doubted it would have made any difference. They had disliked me from the start and would likely have found another reason to hate me regardless. I reminded them that every financial contribution we had made to help them over the years had included my efforts and my name, yet they had never shown any gratitude. We had lied to them about our financial arrangement because it made things easier for us. Even before we started lying, they had treated me poorly without justification. Now that the truth was out, I saw no reason to continue subjecting myself to their hostility. Landon and I left the party, but before we did, we noticed the guests' reactions. It was clear that everyone in the room was appalled by the behavior of Landon's parents. When we got home, it felt like a huge weight had been lifted. We had spent years maintaining this lie, and now that the truth was out, we no longer had to worry about keeping up the facade. The next day, Landon's parents called him. Initially, we thought they might apologize or at least try to reconcile. Instead, they accused us of being terrible people for lying to them and claimed that my speech had humiliated them and made them look like bad parents. I disagreed. I didn't make them look bad. I simply held up a mirror to their behavior. While I admit that lying was not ideal, it was the only way to prevent them from constantly pressuring Landon to get a job and making our lives unbearable. Cutting them off completely wasn't an option because of their health issues, and we would have been consumed by guilt if we had tried. Despite their anger over the lying, I couldn't understand why they had always disliked me, even when I had been instrumental in supporting them financially. Every check we had written to them included my name alongside Landon's. When Landon pressed them for an explanation, they tried to dodge the question and instead returned to their grievance about being lied to. They also mentioned that my speech at the party had caused many of their friends to dislike them instantly. Landon didn't let them off the hook and demanded an answer as to why they hated me. After everything I had done, including organizing their anniversary party, coordinating with vendors, and helping with the expenses, they still refused to acknowledge my contributions. Even though Landon was defending us, his parents were still determined to hate me. I could hear Landon's mother screaming loudly from the other side of the phone. She was so enraged that I could hear her clearly, despite sitting just a few inches away from him. She accused us of gaslighting them for years and said she would never forgive us. She also claimed that because of my speech at the party, everyone in their lives now despised them. She expressed her disgust with both of us before hanging up. Since then, they've been bombarding Landon with texts, demanding we tell them exactly how much money they owe us. They insisted that they didn't want any favors from me anymore, and they planned to return everything I had ever helped them with, even if it meant selling everything they owned. They said they could accept help from their son, but not from me, because I was a liar. I'm feeling really conflicted and guilty about the whole situation. Am I the asshole for lying to my in-laws about my husband's job and for making that speech at their anniversary party to reveal the truth? Update 1. It's been a week since the party, and Landon and I have decided that the best course of action is to block my in-laws and move on. It's clear there's no reasoning with them. They just want a reason to hate me, and that's it. I'll admit, we probably shouldn't have lied to them for so long because that made them feel incredibly betrayed. but I don't believe telling them the truth would have made them like me any better. Until now, I had stayed in touch with them out of sympathy because of their health issues, and I didn't want to take Landon away from them. But now, Landon is done with them. He's been apologizing to me daily since the party, and he feels responsible for everything that happened. I keep reassuring him that he is not to blame for his parents' actions. A lot of Landon's relatives have reached out to support me and expressed that what happened at the party was completely unacceptable. Many people have cut ties with his parents, but honestly, I don't feel good about it. They're just an elderly couple, and while I won't encourage anyone to cut them off, I'm not going to stop them either. It's their decision. This whole ordeal has left me feeling drained, and I just want to move on. Landon and I are planning a short trip this weekend to get away from the drama and have some time to process everything. Update 2. A couple of days ago, Landon and I blocked Bob and Sheila everywhere. No stone was left unturned to ensure they couldn't contact us. Yesterday, we left in the morning for our short trip to the beach. But just as we were enjoying our day, I received a call from the alarm company saying they'd detected someone trying to break into our house. My gut told me it was Bob and Sheila. I immediately logged into the security cameras to check the footage, and sure enough, it was them. They had been ringing the doorbell for almost 15 minutes before trying to break in by any other means. They eventually managed to break into the house by smashing the glass bay window in our living room. They had even brought bricks with them, clearly planning this in advance. I made a note of everything, as I'm planning to take legal action and recover the costs for the broken door. It was an expensive door, and I won't let them get away with this. At their age and given their circumstances, it was incredibly bold of them to try to break into our house in the first place. Once they got in, they hadn't left yet when I received the call from the alarm company. While reviewing the footage, I realized they must still be inside, so I immediately called the police. I also informed my neighbor, who's a good friend, about what was going on. Within half an hour, the cops showed up and escorted them off our property. Now it's up to the district attorney to decide if they'll be charged, though I'm guessing they won't be, considering their age. They'll likely play the sympathy card and claim they didn't know better, but it still infuriated me that they would do something like this. For now, I contacted my neighbor again, and she managed to get someone to install a temporary glass to replace the one they shattered. It's much cheaper than the original, but we'll have it replaced with something better as soon as we return. And I promise I'm going to make Bob and Sheila pay for the damage they caused. I'll make sure I get every penny back. Their actions are completely unacceptable, but Landon and I had already decided that nothing, not even their antics, would ruin our weekend. So, we're still enjoying our time at the beach, and we'll deal with the situation when we get back home. Update 3. As expected, the district attorney dropped the charges against them due to their age. Landon mentioned that his dad is close friends with someone related to the DA, so this may have influenced the decision, which feels incredibly unfair. However, I'm choosing not to pursue it any further since it's not worth it. We also did a thorough check of the house, and luckily, nothing was stolen or damaged inside, so it wasn't a total loss. Honestly, I don't even know what they were trying to do inside the house, but I'm still going to send them a legal notice to pay me back for the glass door. I've already emailed them, letting them know that they need to pay me back for everything I've spent on them over the years. They had been asking us for the figures of what they owed, insisting they didn't want to accept any more help from me. Now it's their turn to return the favor. Over the past 9 years, they've accumulated nearly $80,000 in expenses I've helped cover, and they are now indebted to me until the full amount is repaid. While I might have felt guilty about it before, after the break-in, I don't think they deserve any sympathy. Even Landon agrees that I'm doing the right thing. And honestly, I think I'm doing it much later than I should have. I've always tried to be kind and generous, but some people simply don't deserve it. I've consulted with my lawyer, and based on the footage, it's clear that they are responsible for the damage to the glass door, so they'll have to cover the replacement costs. However, since there was no official contract or documentation, it might be difficult to get back the rest of the money they owe me. I'm not going to let it go easily, though. I plan to keep emailing them until they either agree to pay up or until one of us gets tired. I don't need the money as badly as they do, but after all the humiliation I've endured, I'm not just going to let it slide. Update 4. A couple of weeks ago, we sent a legal notice to my in-laws demanding that they pay for the damage to the glass door. The process was surprisingly straightforward, and within 2 weeks we reached a settlement. They paid the full amount without any further issues. The worst part wasn't the initial encounter, but the interaction that followed when we met with our lawyers. We had to keep our composure so they didn't act like unruly elderly people. However, once we were in the parking lot, things took a turn. I thought they wouldn't have anything to say to us anymore, and we were ready to go home. Landon and I had driven there in my new car, and naturally, I should have expected they'd have an issue with it. They immediately assumed I was trying to flaunt my wealth. Sheila walked up to me with Bob standing behind her and spat on the ground next to my feet. She then told me to leave quickly or I would regret it. I was completely caught off guard. Sheila claimed that this was exactly what I deserved for humiliating them at their party, and now, because of me, nobody wanted anything to do with them. She blamed me for it all. When Landon intervened and told her that her behavior was unacceptable, she snapped at him, saying she didn't even want to talk to him because, in her eyes, he was just as terrible as I was. She called him a loser with no money of his own and said he had no right to speak. Then, Bob did something unexpected. He climbed onto the hood of my car and punched the windshield so hard that he not only hurt himself, but also cracked the windshield. Sheila, acting like she had done something impressive, told me not to worry, that she'd pay for the damage and what she owed me. Landon and I were in shock, not knowing how to react. We considered calling the police, but we knew they had already been let off with a light punishment before, and it was likely to happen again. Instead, we decided to ignore them. We knew we would eventually get our money back, so we just wanted to move on. We didn't care if they were punished. After everything, they'd be on their own, and that felt like punishment enough. We didn't want to get tangled up in any more legal hassles. We just wanted to live our lives in peace, away from Bob and Sheila. I had once said I didn't want them to be completely isolated from the family, but after all that had happened, I had changed my mind. Landon reached out to most of his relatives to explain everything. He told them that from now on, if Bob and Sheila were invited to any family events, we would not be attending. Most of his family supported this decision, saying they wanted nothing to do with them, especially after hearing what had transpired. The line was drawn, and it wasn't going to be crossed again. Update 5. It's been almost a year since I last posted here, and something happened yesterday that I wanted to share. I'm pregnant. We found out a few weeks ago, and yesterday we decided to throw a small party to announce it. We weren't initially planning on a big celebration, but it just felt right, especially since I'm almost in my late 30s. Everyone is thrilled for us, but just as we were getting ready for the party, guess who showed up? Uninvited. Yep, Sheila and Bob. They arrived almost an hour before the party was supposed to start. I'd been waiting for this moment ever since Sheila had said she wanted to move past everything and start fresh, especially now that she was going to be a grandmother. So I did exactly what I had been wanting to do all this time. I spat on the ground, just like she had done to me a year ago, and told her to get lost. I slammed the door in their faces. They kept ringing the doorbell, but when I opened it again, I warned them that if they didn't leave, I would call the cops, and this time I wouldn't let them off easily. They asked to speak to Landon, but he stepped out and told them that since he wasn't the primary earner in the family and was such a huge loser, he didn't feel he was worthy of speaking with them. He told them it would be better if they just left. After that, they left, humiliated. We're incredibly happy because now, I feel it's the right time to pursue a restraining order against them. Now that I'm pregnant, I don't want them in our lives ever again. I'm going to make sure of it.